Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Saturday, July 13th. Over the next several days, we'll continue to have lightning increase across the Great Basin. Today, it will spread over much of Nevada and Utah into parts of southern Idaho. And these thunderstorms may be a mix of wet and dry in some areas. However, they will be moving fairly quickly, especially on the west side of the basin, and also will be occurring in areas that have seen very recent hot and dry conditions, so fuel conditions very dry across all of these areas that we will see lightning. As we move into Sunday, thunderstorms basically spread across all areas of the Great Basin, and then on Monday, some drier air finally works into parts of western Great Basin, pushing that lightning threat to the east. Again, these thunderstorms will mainly be on the drier side or possibly a mix of wet and dry, but very critical conditions with fuels going over the next few days after this recent heat wave. So definitely very, very important, these thunderstorms moving across regardless of whether or not they have rain. Also, we'll continue with our very hot temperatures today, but these temperatures will start to fall off the next couple of days. And then still some remaining windy conditions over parts of central Idaho today. Looking at the last 24 hours, you can see we have had some lightning across the Great Basin, especially over parts of western Great Basin and into parts of south central areas, and a cluster up in Idaho. These thunderstorms, again, did not produce much rainfall, very spotty precipitation. We did have 11 new fires over the last 24 hours for 258.5 acres across the Great Basin and 1,200 acres of growth on our large fires, which are scattered across the region. Over the last 7 to 14 days, still very dry conditions have continued across the Great Basin. However, that will be changing in the coming days. We will see a spattering of very light precipitation with these thunderstorms. ERC percentiles continue to rise. We are seeing many areas above the 97th percentile across the Great Basin, and other areas that are not quite there yet are definitely seeing significant rises with these hot and dry conditions. 10-hour and 100-hour fuel moisture, you can see 10-hour fuel moisture very critical over parts of northwest Nevada into Idaho, and a little bit of some improvement with the recent moisture that's moved up in parts of southern Nevada, and 100-hour fuel moisture still very critical across many areas of Nevada and Utah. Looking at some of our ERC charts, you can see up on the Salmon Chalice, ERCs are already at record highs for the time of year and just will continue to climb. And then even over parts of south central and other areas of the Great Basin across Nevada and Utah, we're seeing ERCs at or above records for the time of year. We may see these ERCs come down a little bit due to continued days of thunderstorms and some higher humidity, getting us out of those really low single-digit humidities we've seen recently, and better overnight recoveries. However, still will remain very high for the time of year. So with these fuel conditions and the recent very hot and dry conditions, we do have a fuel and fire behavior advisory for much of Nevada into southwest Idaho and the western and southern half of Utah. The area in the hatched area is more for the above normal fine fuel loading, as well as the very dry 100-hour and 1,000-hour fuel moistures. And the area in red is more for critical drying of dead and live fuel moistures, seeing live fuel moistures very low for the time of year. Looking at the satellite image for this morning, you can see high pressure dominating the Four Corners area with an area of low pressure just off the west coast. This in combination is pushing that moisture up into the Great Basin. You can see that from the cloud cover and some isolated shower activity this morning. That will continue to increase, and we'll see better chances of lightning further north today, both in overall coverage and in a larger area. So we do have a large area of high risk for all of Nevada into western and southern Utah and the Arizona Strip for this increase in lightning. Again, even though we will have some moisture and some very spotty precipitation, it's really the very strong gusty outflow winds that we did see yesterday with these thunderstorms, which peaked above 50 or 60 miles per hour. Still a threat with these very dry low levels. And also, again, any precipitation is very spotty, so we'll get some of those dry lightning strikes as well. Otherwise, still some breezy winds up in Idaho, so do have some high risks for that as we do have a large fire in that region. Relative humidity today, mostly in the teens across the area. And you can see from the image on the right, a lot of these stronger winds indicating those gusty outflow winds with thunderstorms. So really a big potential for those strong and gusty outflow winds anywhere from western Utah and western Arizona Strip across Nevada. And you can see those gusty winds still in the Salmon Chalice and northern Sawtooth today. Temperatures still will be hot, peaking above 100 degrees in many valley locations for one more day before we start to see a little bit of cooling. And you can see the model prediction for thunderstorms, again, a larger area across Nevada and Utah down into Arizona, with still some isolated activity up into eastern Idaho and Wyoming. As we move into Sunday, as this area of low pressure off the west coast starts to push further north, that will increase our moisture further north. So we do have a large area of high risk for, again, that mix of wet and dry thunderstorms, but really the strong and gusty outflow winds with those drier strikes most concerning. And again, really across most areas of the Great Basin, also tying into Oregon and California to our west and into Idaho and parts of Montana to our east. Relative humidity still staying in the teens. Some areas will get a little bit better moisture on Sunday, especially in the higher terrain. But again, you can see the large potential for those thunderstorms and gusty outflow winds. Temperatures definitely cool several degrees over western sides of the Great Basin, still over 100 degrees for the valleys of Idaho and Utah. And again, Sunday, you can see how the thunderstorms really spread north and indicate all areas are at risk for those thunderstorms. On Monday, some of the deeper moisture starts to be pushed off to the east as this trough along the west coast starts to push inland, pushing some drier air into western Nevada. Still can't rule out thunderstorms in Nevada or even southwest Idaho and western Utah as this moisture really doesn't get wrung out completely. So still expecting some isolated thunderstorms on Monday, but our high risk really is for parts of central and eastern Idaho and Wyoming and parts of northern Utah where we might have that better thunderstorm coverage. Monday, relative humidity again, mostly in the teens. You can see that drier air working in a little bit to western Nevada. Still some of those gusty outflow winds in Utah and eastern Idaho, and you can see even indicating that threat still into parts of western and eastern Nevada. Some breezier winds move into parts of northern Nevada, but most gusts mainly in the 20s. But after thunderstorm activity, that would still be something to pay attention to. Temperatures dropping into the 90s in all valley locations by Monday. And again, you can see that thunderstorm potential mostly over Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah, but still isolated activity further west. 3-day precipitation, again, very spotty. The better chances of any wetting rain would be in the higher elevations of the Sierra and also into parts of central Utah and Wyoming. But again, even there, very spotty precipitation and still those gusty outflow winds would be a big concern. As we go into Tuesday, we have some drier air really trying to push into the western side of the Great Basin. Still likely some moisture remaining for isolated thunderstorms over the eastern half of the area. We don't have any high risk as coverage should be diminishing as a lot of this moisture gets pushed further east, but it is something we'll continue to watch. Similar conditions on Wednesday and Thursday. May see another reemergence of some moisture later in the week for increase in thunderstorms for the Great Basin Thursday and Friday, but that's quite a ways off, so we'll continue to watch that. You can see from our significant fire potential product, we are really not expecting really fire danger to drop as this moisture remains in place, as it's very spotty and relative humidity still only increasing into the teens. 7-day total precipitation, not a whole lot different than the 3-day. And the 8 to 14-day outlook taking us into the end of July still shows hot temperatures for the Great Basin and potentially more moisture surges going in later in the month. Again, whether or not that's really above normal precipitation or just an increase in lightning remains to be seen, but right now we're still looking at just an increase in lightning. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.